I think the debate for the new generations, instead of capitalism or socialism, is we're going to have both, and then which proportion of each should we have in order to make this all work? It's a much more sensible debate.
Yes, a much more sensible debate. Howard Dean, former Democrat governor, presidential candidate, DNC chair. He's brought us much closer to the European model, too. And now we go live to Kamala Harris campaign headquarters for their morning ritual. Comrade workers, stand and salute your leaders. They're going to make groceries less expensive by using the hobnailed boot of the state to stomp on corporate greed. It's corporate greed that's making your macaroni and cheese so expensive. And they will stop that, comrade workers. Kamala knows. What does she know? Economics. She doesn't know economics. She knows how to run a business. She doesn't know how to run a business. She knows all about price gouging and corporate greed. She didn't know anything about any of those Democrat Party bumper stickers. The Sovietization of the Democrat Party is nearly complete, comrade workers. And today, Kamala, she's going to give her first policy speech as whatever she is. What is she? She's the vice president, I guess. We haven't really noticed much of that in the last few years. She's the border czarina and done a heck of a job there, hasn't she? A heck of a job. Just remarkable stuff. If you like being raped and murdered by Venezuelan gangs, then she is your pick. She's definitely a Oh, we got another one. Who's this? The Haitian. You got a Haitian now in New York, not a border state. Raped the pregnant woman. That's yesterday's arrest. The Democrat Party's racking them up. You know, if they're only Republicans, the news media would pay attention to this. If you want to have a government that's held accountable, you must have a Republican Party government, because a Democrat Party government, absolutely accountability free, no accountability whatsoever. None of this feet to the fire stuff from the filthy, corrupt, sleeping with them, lubing them up news media, the fluffers of the so-called mainstream news media can't be trusted to hold the government accountable when Democrats are in power. That's why, if you believe in government accountability, you have to have Republicans in power. Got to have Republicans in the White House and the Congress. Then the news media is like, it's like a piranha tank. Then they're after you. Honestly, it's like Epstein Island. They just can't wait to get to you and do stuff to you. But with the Democrats, they just rub-a-dub-dub. It's another thing altogether. So Kamala Harris is supposed to give her first policy speech today. And in delivering her first policy speech, according to all the media, all the news media people, they are planning on, she is planning on announcing price fixing prices on groceries, because they saw a poll somewhere that people, us, are upset that grocery store prices have they doubled? They're up more than 20% since Joe Biden, and a lot of them are up more than that, depending on what you're buying. A lot more than 22%. I think 22 point something is the figure that's given on how much our grocery prices have gone up since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took over. In reality, we know that it's more than that because of the stuff that you actually buy. But never mind that. Remarkable stuff. So Kamala is planning on implementing a Soviet, that was the Soviet national anthem and the Soviet Army Men's Choir, singing the national anthem. Just an amazing moment in American political history. The Washington Post, radical left-wingers at the Washington Post, they've got an article on this. My best girl was reading the Washington Post this morning. Notice that there are 5 or 6 different full-color photographs today of Kamala Harris in just in today's edition of the Washington Post that all make her look glorious. It's like Hitler in Munich. She's smiling, laughing even, waving. The crowd is enthusiastic. They're waving little Nazi flags or Palestinian flags or whatever. They're burning American flags. Amazing things. And let me tell you, these people, here's the headline online, a piece in the Washington Post. When your opponent calls you communists, and they put communist in quotation marks, maybe don't propose price controls. That's the headline of the Washington Post. It's kind of an amazing thing. It is. And you click on it and the headline changes. You know how that happens. Kamala Harris's price gouging proposal is a terrible idea. That's the Washington Post, a radical left-wing extremist group owned by the billionaire oligarch who's one of the information oligarchs who corrupts the flow of information to the American people, kind of like our intelligence community and penitentiary face Brennan. I wonder how they're planning on tampering with our presidential election this time around, and whether they'll end up in orange jumpsuits and handcuffs as a result. I'm guessing probably not. So she has this absolutely crazy price-fixing idea. Even the Washington Post can't quite believe it. Price controls. That's what Hugo Chavez did in Venezuela. And before long, men were chasing garbage trucks down the street, hoping to grab old food scraps out of the back of the garbage truck. There's videotape of this happening in Venezuela. Brave, strong young men in their 20s chasing garbage trucks in the hope of getting scraps of food. And this is Kamala Harris's economic plan. It has failed again and again and again, had met with catastrophic results in country after country. And she thinks this is an idea because she has a brain the size of a pea. A pea. No insult to peas. Amazing stuff. Also, Forbes magazine today, Harris's economic agenda will include proposal for $25,000 in down payments for first-time home buyers. I got an idea. Maybe interest rates shouldn't be as high as they are. Maybe your economic policies shouldn't be a catastrophe. But let's just turn it into socialism. $25,000 down payment. It's a payment aid for first-time home buyers. Deutschland, über alles. Amazing stuff. And Kamala Harris to call for expanded child tax credit. 3 million new housing units. She wants to build millions. This is the Soviet Union, comrade workers. This isn't free market capitalism. It's not the United States of America. It's none of the above. Isn't it amazing? And she picked Comrade Tim as her vice presidential running mate, Tim Walz. And, he is, here's a great article on him today. The CCP's, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP's candidate for vice president, Tiananmen Tim. And they've nicknamed him, it's, he's got Tampon Tim already because he's putting, female hygiene products in the boys' rooms in grammar schools and high schools just in case because he's mentally ill. And he started the first gay-straight alliance in the high school when he was at the high school. I wonder if he wanted to play Duck, Duck, Goose or what. But here he is, Tiananmen Square Tim, in addition to Tampon Tim, because I've been talking about this, how he chose as his wedding day to his beloved bride, his bride who loves the smell of napalm in the morning, his bride who loves the smell of burning businesses in Minneapolis. She left the windows open at night so she could smell the violence, smell the riots, smell the arson. They love the smell of napalm in the morning. It smells like victory. Tiananmen Tim, he chose the 5th anniversary of the massacre of students at Tiananmen Square to be their wedding day. And that's, just total commie stuff all over the place. Of course, Barack Obama was mentored as a teenager by a member of the Communist Party, Frank Marshall Davis. And he's an Alinskyite, who's a radical left-wing revolutionary radical. And did I mention that he's radical? He's radical. And then, of course, Barack Obama chose as his CIA director, John Brennan, who voted for the Communist Party candidate for president of the United States. Yeah, Gus Hall. He's a Gus Hall voter. Then he became CIA director thanks to Barack Obama, who was mentored by Frank Marshall Davis of the Communist Party. Now comes Kamala, as there might be a song in there. And now comes Kamala, and she's got all kinds of brilliant ideas, like death to the Jews. Is that one of her, is that on the campaign platform? Is that on the web? Haven't really put all their positions on the website yet, but we're thinking armbands for party members. Got to be coming soon. Pretty amazing stuff. 3 million new housing units. The government is going to decide to build 3 million new housing units. And what is that? I mean, honestly, I know we got a homeless problem. Maybe we should start talking about that before you go full Soviet. And $25,000 for down payment aid for first-time home buyers buying votes again, like Chicago crooks with guns showing up at polling places. And her price gouging proposal, which will fix prices in grocery stores. And, you know, there's my friend Brian sent a couple of photos today. One photo of an American grocery store a few years ago where the shelves are spilling over with everything you've ever dreamed of getting in a grocery store. The second photo, the interior of a grocery store where all the shelves are bare. They're all empty. And that picture was taken in Venezuela after the communists, they call themselves socialists very often, like Bernie Sanders and Lawrence O'Donnell at MSNBC. They call themselves socialists when in reality they're communists. The Soviet Union called themselves socialists too. The Nazi Party called themselves socialists. You got to keep your eyes peeled for these socialists. They're up to no good, I'm here to tell you. But remarkable stuff. And Fox News story, critics blast Harris's grasp of inflation, attack on business ahead of policy speech. Quote, lunatic behavior. Lunatic behavior. And again, even the Washington Post with kind of an amazing headline and a remarkable story. Just amazing stuff. When your opponent calls you, and President Trump did refer to Kamala and the Democrats as communists yesterday at his speech and his press conference, very lengthy press conference. He, just takes all the questions until the reporters are exhausted, for better and for worse. But when your opponent calls you a communist, the Washington Post headline reads, maybe don't propose price controls. They're just trying to be helpful at the Washington Post. Catherine Rampel over there, trying to help the Democrat Party by pointing out, don't go full commie, just suggesting, well, don't go full commie when people are already suggesting that you're kind of a commie. But they're going full commie because that's what the Democrat Party has become. Remarkable stuff. Also, did you see RFK Jr.? RFK Jr. wanted to have a meeting with Kamala Harris to talk about endorsing her and then taking a lofty position in her theoretical administration, right? And the Kamala Harris and the Democrats blew him off. And he didn't like that, RFK Jr. And he said something about the state of the Democrat Party that I thought was noteworthy, and I will share that with you. He sounded kind of like me for just a minute, only for a minute. But we've got all kinds of remarkable things going on here. And Israeli forces. Now, there was a big march in Israel yesterday calling for the release of the hostages. How many? There are 115 or 130 hostages, including 8 Americans. We think some of them have not been tortured to death yet. Some of the Americans, some of the other hostages. Biden doesn't talk about it. The news media doesn't talk about it because they're filthy. They're filthy, corrupt. They don't cover the news. They cover up the news. Remarkable stuff. But a march in Israel yesterday saying, hey, how about get the hostages back? And what about those American hostages? Have they all been murdered, tortured and raped and murdered by the savages? And the Democrats are defending the savages everywhere you look. In fact, University of North Carolina, they're already preparing because the Nazi groups are coming back. That's why Joe Biden ran for president, isn't it? Yeah, they're all Democrats, all these Nazis. University of North Carolina braces as anti-Israel group dubbed Voice for Hamas is calling for armed rebellion by any means necessary. They hate the Jews and their violent mobs. The Democrats have organized all these groups. The Democrat Party is a threat to our democracy. Remarkable stuff. Yeah, they love Hamas and hate the Jews. They don't care about hostages. They take more hostages. We call them Democrats. They call themselves liberals. Remarkable stuff. And the Democratic National Convention is scheduled to start on Monday. They busted that guy with a truckload of chemicals. Not a lot of follow-up on that for some reason. We are at 888-630-9625. Go ahead and jump. Yeah, want to hear what Robert F. Kennedy said about the Democrat Party today? He must have been listening to my show. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Andy, listening online from the Garden State of New Jersey. I like to call it the Garden State. Andrew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Plant. First of all, I want to thank you and alcohol for getting me through the last 4 years.
You're welcome.
Done an excellent job.
Very good. That's a team effort.
See, I'm so sick and tired of hearing about Project 2025. I really think that the Republicans and Trump have to fight back and call what Harris and Walz are doing and call Project 1848, which is when the Communist Manifesto was published, because they're out to destroy God, destroy family, destroy gender, and destroy capitalism. And that's what I think they should do in response.
Very good. Very good. I tell you, man, I've talked about doing a work myself on the 1861 project when the Democrat Party fired on Fort Sumter and started the Civil War to keep their slaves. The history of the Democrat Party is a sordid, violent, criminal history from its earliest days up until today. And I love your Project 1848. That's a great idea. And you're right about being sick and tired about hearing about Project 2025. A Heritage Foundation, an office at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, came up with what they have proposed as a conservative agenda. And the filthy, corrupt news media, in bed, naked and lubricated with the Democrat Party, really a sleeping bag, writhing around. And they're trying to say, oh, well, there's one line in there that's like 900 pages long that's objectionable, and that's Trump. Trump did that, and Trump has nothing to do with Heritage or Project 2025 or anything else. Right, Andy?
I agree with you. Have a great American weekend.
Oh, thank you. Listen how concise he is, see? The conservatives, intelligent, historical point, wonderful point, well-spoken, adult, thanks alcohol and me too. That's wonderful. Yeah, even the Washington Post, I tell you, you go so commie that even Jeff Bezos, Washington Post, shopping for bad policy, try grocery price controls. The Washington Post. Quite a remarkable thing to see, and of course, the when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. Washington Post, Washington Post. And Catherine Rampel at the Washington Post typing, price gouging, in quotation marks, is the focus of Vice President Kamala Harris's economic agenda. Her presidential campaign says she'll crack down on excessive prices, also in quotation marks, and excessive corporate profits, particularly for groceries. Now, any child of 6 can look this up, and lickety-split, you will discover that grocery store profit margins are typically between 1% and maybe, if they're lucky, 3%. But she's going to crack down, that's the communist language that the commie maroon is using here, on excessive prices. Why don't we do that for cars, houses? Don't suggest it. They'll adopt it. So what level counts for excessive, Catherine Rampel asks in the Washington Post. What level counts as excessive, you might ask. TBD, to be determined. But Harris will ban that because what they don't want to ban, they want to make mandatory. And whatever they do not want to make mandatory, they want to ban. Keep in mind that Democrats don't care what you do as long as it's mandatory. That's the thing about price gouging, the Post says. As has been said of hardcore pornography, you know it when you see it. It's kind of a strange place to go for Catherine Rampell, but maybe she's a very lonely woman. I wouldn't be at all surprised. It's not hard to figure out where this proposal came from, she writes. Voters want to blame someone for high grocery bills, and the presidential candidates, no, just the Democrats, have apparently decided to, chose either the Biden administration or corporate greed. They hate corporations, they hate capitalism, they're anti-capitalist, they're all communists are. And I got to say, I like the idea of the 1848 project, the year that Frederick Engels and Karl Marx published the Communist Manifesto, and the Democrat Party still trying to animate the Communist Manifesto. Harris has chosen the latter, the Washington Post says. In a news release Wednesday, her campaign said the first 100 days, of her presidency would include the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries. Now, how exactly do you implement that, you communists? Rifle butts at the farm field? Where do you do that? The first ever ban on price gouging. And Catherine Rampell even asked right away, what exactly is price gouging? What is an excessive price for a peach, for a pound of steak? And who decides that? The free market or the communists in charge of the Democrat Party? Pretty amazing stuff. What are these cruel roads of the cruel rules of the road or the threshold that determine when a price or a profit level becomes, quote, excessive, end quote? The memo doesn't say, and the campaign didn't answer questions I sent seeking clarification. Why would they? They don't answer anybody's questions. They don't do interviews. They don't hold press conferences. They're communists. It's about time we just stopped tap dancing around this. The most likely template for Harris's proposal is a recent bill from Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's a Native American, Oh, wait a minute. That was just another conspiracy theory, wasn't it? Harris co-sponsored a similar bill, Kamala Harris did, with Warren in 2020. Harris was a senator then, of course. Warren's bill would ban any, quote, grossly excessive price, end quote, during any, quote, atypical disruption, end quote, of a market. The government is the wrong tool for all of this. These people are going to be suicide bombers. I think they may end up self-immolating. But enough of that. Even the Washington Post and Catherine Rampell are shaking their heads and saying, so, excuse me, I read your words, but what do they mean? What does this terminology mean? What is excessive? Who decides that? The federal government? And then what do you do? Roll tanks on grocery stores to trample their rights to determine what the free market demonstrates when it comes to selling pasta or peaches or anything else? But never mind that. President Trump yesterday was speaking, and he had quite an event yesterday. He's got another press conference today, doesn't he? He's got another press conference today. Kamala still doesn't. I think it's day 25. She might be held hostage in Gaza or something, but she's flying around on taxpayer money. I guess some of it's campaign money with that idiot, Tim Walz, the governor, who is a war hero that stayed home. He went to Italy, though. I think the war was over by then. 1945, the war ended there, but he was dispatched to Italy. And the food was good. It might explain his physique, could explain his physique. A lot of pasta restaurants there. All right, so here's President Trump yesterday, and he's on the case.
Now Kamala is reportedly proposing communist price controls. She wants price controls And if they worked, I'd go along with it too, but they don't work. They actually have the exact opposite impact and effect. But it leads to food shortages, rationing, hunger, dramatically more inflation. Their Inflation Reduction Act, by the way, was a disaster. It's what caused the inflation. Their Inflation Reduction Act was a con job.
Amazing. President Trump in Bedminster, New Jersey yesterday. And whose plan is this? The Washington Post says they think it sounds like an Elizabeth Warren plan. She's a commie, academic, fake Indian. She should have been thrown out of the Senate when they all found out she was a completely fake Cherokee Indian. High cheekbones, just like her papaw, you know. President Trump yesterday, he knows whose plan it is.
She's running on the Maduro Plan. We call it the Maduro Plan, like something straight out of Venezuela or the Soviet Union. This announcement is an admission that her economic policies have totally failed and caused really a catastrophe for our country, and beyond that, a catastrophe in the world.
Honestly, you know, when the United States is taken down, it's why the left has had the long knives out for the United States for so long. Because if they can take us down, they can take capitalism down. They can take, you know, that shining city on a hill will be burned to the ground and looted by the Democrat Party. That beacon will be smashed into smithereens. I just wanted to use the word smithereens because it's kind of fun. President Trump on Kamala, she's going to make her first policy speech today. It's on her economic plan, and really it's Karl Marx's economic plan.
If Kamala wins the election, the worst is yet to come. You'll have a real problem in the future because people don't respect her in the world. People don't respect her in the economy. Economists are laughing. They can't even believe this is happening to our country. And she wants to change a free enterprise type country into a communist type country. That's what she knows. She's considered far more radical than Bernie Sanders. That's all you have to know. Far more radical.
You know, my best girl and I were talking about this. We'd talk about a lot of things, and sometimes we'd go into these fields. And President Trump's talking about how no one in the world respects Kamala Harris, and that is a fact, Jack. You know, President Reagan won and earned the respect of Soviet leaders, Mikhail Gorbachev and beyond, and the news media painted such a terrible picture of Ronald Reagan as an apocalyptic nightmare that the bad guys of the world were terrified of him. Even the Ayatollahs who were holding hostages when he was running for president the first time around. And I think they were holding 52 hostages by the time we got to Inauguration Day. And the Iranian terrorists immediately released the American hostages that they were holding after they overran the American embassy in Tehran, right? And it was kind of a big deal. Jimmy Carter let the Shah of Iran fall. He was pro-Western, pro-women's liberation, pro-civilization, and Jimmy Carter's administration just let him fall. And then the Ayatollahs rose, and we're still dealing with the consequences of the Carter administration's bad foreign policy today, quite literally. Iran still attacking Israel, war in the Middle East. It's all Iran, still being funded by the Democrat Party, tens of billions by the Obama-Biden administration, billions more by the Biden-Kamala Harris administration. The bad guys of the world love weakness in the United States of America, and they fear and despise strength. Now, President Trump said nobody respects her, and that's going to be true. The Ayatollahs won't respect her. Putin won't respect her. Kim Jong-un won't respect her. Xi Jinping will not respect her. But Donald Trump becomes president, and all the characters I just cited are on notice that the sheriff is back in town, and there's no more of this stuff because Putin is terrified of Trump. He even talked about it yesterday, as a matter of fact. Putin is terrified of Trump. Kim Jong-un is not going to act up on Trump. Xi Jinping knows that President Trump knows the power of the United States, the U.S. economy, the U.S. military, the power of the United States culturally, and Xi Jinping knows that he will roll right over Kamala Harris as he has with Joe Biden, but even more so. And in Afghanistan, where the Democrats, Joe Biden, left Afghanistan to the Taliban, and they had their big parade day before yesterday with all the U.S. military equipment. You know that they've returned to stoning women to death. They're kind of old-fashioned. The Democrats, they accuse Republicans of being all kinds of terrible things, and then the Democrats every time create circumstances where women are stoned to death again, and public floggings, and 1.4 million women that were getting an education in Afghanistan are now thrown out onto the street to fend for themselves. There will be no education for you. And they brought back stoning women to death. That's old school. And the Democrats turn a blind eye to it. It's a wink and a nod, a rub and a tug. They're happy with all of it. Just amazing stuff. President Trump talking about Kamala yesterday at Bedminster, New Jersey.
She said that a 70 to 80% tax rate is, quote, a bold idea that should be discussed and studied. 70 to 80%. She co-sponsored legislation to abolish very popular private health insurance, which 150 Americans rely on, dumping everyone onto inferior socialist government-run healthcare systems with rationing and deadly wait times, while massively raising your taxes.
That's them making it better. See, they're always making it better, just like they made Afghanistan better by leaving, because we're the bad guys and the Taliban is not, and they're stoning women to death. Now, just don't spend too much time thinking about it, but think for a minute about women being stoned to death. The men that show up to throw big baseball-sized rocks at women until they're dead. They tie them to something like a tree or a pole or a building, and then they stone them to death, and that's okay. That's good. Let's grab a phone call. Let's go to Dave, calling from Charleston, South Carolina. David, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm great, Dave. What do you know?
Chris, I'm a Bronze Star recipient from Desert Storm. I was in the 1st Cavalry Division, and I worked for General Tommy Franks running a prison war camp. I bet you interviewed Tommy Franks a couple of times, didn't you?
I met him a few times. Yes, I did.
Nice fella, great leader.
Yep.
My biggest problem as a Bronze Star recipient with Governor Walz is I respect a whole lot what he did with the National Guard, but his way he portrays himself as a combat vet just jaws at me a lot, as it does a lot of combat vets. So I just don't appreciate it, and I think it's wrong. I really do.
Well, you're not alone, of course. He misled, he deceived, he used slippery language and weaselly words. He flat out lied about his rank again and again in writing, online, on his congressional side. I think it's still on his Wikipedia page that he was and retired as a command sergeant major. And as an Army guy, 1st Cav, the status that a command sergeant major has. It's a big deal, right?
Absolutely. It's like a godlike figure.
It is. In the enlisted ranks, there is no more exalted rank than a command sergeant major, and he's a fraud and a cheat and a liar and a weasel. Am I right?
You're on the money, Chris. You're on the money. And one other thing, I know you've got to take off here, but the other point I want to make, and I have not heard this, I'm wondering how President Biden feels about Governor Walz. President Biden lost his son, Beau, after he completed a year tour in Iraq. And he lost his life probably because of his exposure to chemicals over there. But he had a choice at that time to decide whether he wanted to go or not with his unit. And he decided to go. And he paid for it. Governor Walz had a choice to decide whether he wanted to go with his unit or not. And he elected not to go. He elected not to go. And I just think that's bad. I really do. And I'm just wondering how the president feels about that himself, knowing how much he cared and loved for his son, Beau. And he made the ultimate sacrifice.
Well, that is
amazing.
Lot of good, lot of interesting stuff in there, Dave, and I'm saluting you. I'm saluting you. Now, if you look up the likelihood of that particular type of brain cancer and related to burn pits in Iraq, I think you'll find that there's no scientific evidence to suggest that there is a connection. I know Joe Biden has suggested that many times, and he attributes it. And as long as he attributes it to that, then that's what's going on with Joe Biden and in Joe Biden's head. And his son did. He was the good son, you know. He was the lawyer, the state attorney general in Delaware. He put on the uniform and didn't get kicked out because of repeated cocaine abuse like Hunter Biden did out of the Navy. Joe Biden had to pull strings to get him into the Navy in the first place, then to save him after the first cocaine violation. Couldn't save him after the second cocaine violation. But it's true, Beau Biden was the good one, and they thought, oh, he's going to run for president. You know, he's a lawyer. He's going to go to Iraq, where he served in the JAG Corps, the Judge Advocate General Corps, as a lawyer. The burn pits question, though, is a I'll be generous and say an open question, Dave, when it comes to Beau Biden and the Biden family. More Kamala Harris and the news media response to her commie plans coming up. All right, I've got more on the new Communist Party trajectory of the Democrat Party. It has come up in a couple of media programs, and I will share with you. And the former spokesman for Governor Doug Burgum, he was on CNN, right? CNN. And they had a fun back and forth about the new commie. They're just out of the closet. Take the costume off. Take the mask off. Commies, here they come. Kamala may be too dumb to know what she's doing, but we'll try to help open her eyes.